One of the big things for us is that we try to define our successes through preparation, and I think we prepared really well so far. Our program was really founded on the idea of continuous improvement and getting better every day. So the expectations from the outside sources really don't matter that much to us. I think as long as we prepare right and we respect the game, build really good relationships and compete, we'll be successful.
This is Mike Deegan. He is the head men's baseball coach at Denison University, and we're going to talk about how he coaches and mentors his students, or the struggles that they face, and solutions to how we can help kids get better in their sport and in the classroom. So tell me a little bit about yourself. I know you have quite a long list of accolades just from your time even at Denison.
Yeah, I feel like I'm one of the lucky ones that I was able to find a job and a profession that's right in my sweet spot. So, I've been a coach now for over 20 years. On the side, I started writing and speaking probably in 2015-ish. I felt drawn to reflecting, and putting my thoughts on paper was like therapy for me. And what I learned is when you put that into the universe, a lot of like-minded people start gravitating to your stuff. It's been the best learning for me, because from that experience, from me coaching to me writing to me hitting send, I've attracted a lot of amazing people into my life that have really helped me grow and be better, and hopefully serve our athletes and everyone in my orbit in a little better way.
Just reading through a lot of your older blogs and looking at your website, It seems like you are really dedicated to mentoring athletes.
I appreciate you saying that. And I don't know what it is. I can honestly say that a lot of the writing was for me. Yeah. And that sounds very selfish. I think what you see when you read my stuff or listen to me is really just my raw feelings. What I've tried to do is just be really transparent on who I am. It fills me up to help others. Right. Like it makes me feel better. And what's been amazing, that it attracts others. And I learn so much from the younger people who I get to mentor. They're educating me. And to me, that's a mark of a great relationship, when both people can say, hey, I'm getting a lot out of this, is when you're onto something. So I don't feel like I'm some guru or someone who has it all figured out. I'm probably just the opposite. I write to try to flesh it out, and then I speak to try to get a little bit more clarity. And then I think I get a little bit more of a finished product.
Yeah, no, I can relate to that. Like, I have a few college students that I work with, and I am constantly learning from them.
Yeah.
Like, hey, try doing a 10-minute meditation before you start your first thing for the day. And I'm like, well, I don't do that, so I can't really tell them to do that. Yeah. So then I started doing it.
Yeah, it's like the opportunity to have this experience. When people ask you questions, if you're thoughtful, it forces you to really think, right? So sometimes that's what I would tell people who are, seeking someone out to learn from. Like, the right people, they want to do it because it makes them better too. Because with every question you give me today, or every time you suggest meditate, like, you have to challenge yourself, going, hey, am I doing that? Number one. And number two, do I truly believe in what I'm saying, right? So I think it's just such a beautiful exchange. So I encourage everyone to have the courage to ask those questions, because people want to help, and it helps them as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
How can I get close to what I would consider greatness, or how can I get close to people who have a skill set that I'm attracted to? If you ask those questions, and I have found that people are very giving of their time, but I think it's really important, if you're there to learn, like, you're really there to learn.
Yeah.
Like, you go in there and you listen, you follow up. I think sometimes people waste those opportunities. They come in, they're not prepared. So that was kind of my secret sauce.
I always try to work harder than everyone that knows more than me.
Yeah.
That's kind of my mantra. As long as there are people around me who have the ability to guide me and make me better, I want to be in that room.
Without a doubt. And I think then the hump that I had to overcome is like the common phrase, like, of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Because I still find myself in some pretty amazing rooms now, and I wonder why. But then there's the point that you have to get over that and realize that you belong in that room, and don't apologize for being in that room.
Yeah.
You've worked hard to be in that room. And I know when I first got in certain spaces, you try to explain it away, like, hey, I'm just a small college coach. And then I had a mentor check me and say, hey, cut that out. Right. Like, nobody wants to hear that. Like, you're in here for a reason. Talk, be assertive, and do it. So anyways, that was a small mentoring moment for me, that cut it out, like, own the room and go get it.
What are the ways in which you're able to kind of mentor your student athletes on your team to be able to thrive both in and out of the classroom? Where is that overlap?
My job, I feel like, is to show up and try to bring the best version of myself every single day. The more you can be, like, what I would consider like an authentic leader, where you don't separate leader from person. Like, who I am as a leader is who I am as a person, for all the good and the bad, the flaws and everything. So I think our players see that. And I think if I can just show up and be me, and just bring that every day, I think naturally there's mentorship happening without me talking about it.
I know it's kind of like this weird term that can mean a lot of different things. What we do is executive function mentoring. So that's helping students get organized physically, digitally, plan their weeks out, all that sort of stuff. Being able to check in with their teachers, going to office hours.
Those are like critical skills. Those are like things that you're putting in their toolbox to help them. The hard things about coaching is that very rarely do you reap the rewards right away. It's usually, and now that I have enough time served in this business, like it's the feedback loops have come, but it's usually, hey, I was in this meeting today and I have now figured out, because of some of the values in our program, how to get ahead, or like I've learned that just being a great teammate is an incredible competitive advantage in my company. So they may not see it during the messiness of a really hard practice. They're not seeing those things at that moment, but the rewards usually come a little bit later with what I do.
That's really interesting. Just in terms of like recruiting talent, what does that look like? What traits do you look for in new athletes? Because I read your article about one man's trash is another man's treasure. And I find that really interesting.
When you're talking about collegiate baseball at the level we play at, I mean, there obviously has to be like a baseline, pretty high skill set. You know what I mean? Like that's, and then to go to a school like Denison, there has to be a baseline of academic rigor and ability to excel in the classroom. So like those are a given, right? But then from there, there's just a lot of intangibles. And I think one thing that we've done a good job with is you're always trying to create alignment. Like that's, to me, the number one thing for any organization, that from top to bottom, we're all pulling on the same rope. So maybe you get the sense in this interview, but I just try to be really, really transparent. And I probably go the opposite of the way a lot of coaches go. We don't guarantee playing time. We don't guarantee much. We talk about our values and what we're trying to accomplish. And then we attract people who have like-minded goals and they want to get involved in something like this. So for me, it's the clarity that we can create in those conversations allows us to attract people who want a similar experience. And then there's so much messiness that occurs while you're building a team. But that's our motto. They got to have a great ability. They got to be really good students. It has to be a match there. But then you're trying to find those little intangibles that we think play well in our program.
Interesting. I would imagine traits like resilience, that kind of stuff would be.
Yeah, you named a few. Like one of our values is we talk about grit. We say grit is physical and mental toughness and the ability to persevere and overcome obstacles. And I'll say it in every recruiting meeting. I'll turn to the parents and say, if they come to Denison, they will call home and they will say they made the wrong choice at some point because it's hard. Like class is hard. Our program's tough. You don't know if you're going to play. Like there's all these things that come up, but you have to have a little bit of that in you to be successful. And the other, you mentioned the word selfless. We have a word called mudita, which is vicarious joys can be happy for another's success as if it's my own. So we really try to celebrate everybody on our team, and we try to get excited whenever someone gets the big hit. Not if I get the big hit, but if somebody else gets the big hit. So there's some things that we try to really spell out in our values and our systems that we think really makes our program special.
It's kind of like the student has to have a certain level of clarity to maybe see Denison and be like, this is a good fit for me.
You're pulling on that thread, right? And it's really tough for a 17-year-old or 18-year-old to have that kind of clarity. I usually turn to the athletes at that time, the student athletes, and say, you've got to do the hard work to try to figure out what you want out of your college experience. If it's to play right away, that's great. But this probably isn't the place where you would sign up for. You have to know what you want out of it. And then once you know that, this gets a lot easier. So, and by the way, that's, like I said, that's really hard work to do. But I think the ones who thrive are the ones who are able to do that work a little bit earlier than some others.
Yeah, I love that. We talk a ton about goal setting with our students at Untapped Learning. We really focus on that with our college students and also with our high school and middle school students. But for me growing up, my idea of what a goal was actually just kind of other people's expectations of me because I didn't have those skills to be able to plan my own life.
Yeah, I've had some great mentors, great people who are incredibly successful. And there's times like where you find yourself kind of morphing into them, but that's not who I am. Right. So you have to do the work to kind of know who you are, what you want. And I think the quicker you can get on that journey, and that's pretty cool what you guys are doing in Untapped, is trying to at least start getting people to start thinking about those things, even though none of us are a finished product. Yeah. The quicker you can at least start identifying that, I think the better you get a competitive advantage in life.
Yeah, absolutely. We always say it's the process over product, right? Yeah. Like you got to be process focused and work hard and know that it's gonna pay off in the end.
Process is a big thing in sports, and I think where people can get that twisted a little bit though is that there's still no guarantees, right? Yeah. Like, I mean, you can work your process, you can do all those things and still not get the result. If you're willing to learn and look at them as learning experiences, you learn a lot during that. Sometimes people say, I have this goal and I want to start or be an All-American, and I've worked and it didn't happen. That's okay, Right. But what did you become? That's where the sweet spot to me is what you become in that process.
Right. Yeah, I've definitely got to give your book a read. It's the life lessons learned through sports.
Yeah. It's my life lesson I learned through sports. For the good or the bad, when I grew up, sports were probably the main source of learning. And I say that like with a smile because there's just so much in sports that you can learn. I studied it probably a little differently than most, just naturally as a kid. And it's really led to who I am today.
I'm curious, especially with the college athletes, what are some of the struggles that you see students facing more frequently?
A lot of it hasn't changed. There is a pressure to perform in the classroom, pressure to perform on the field. Socially, you're still trying to find your ways. So like those things probably haven't changed. I would say they've been magnified a little bit with, especially at a Denison, there are a lot of high achievers. And I'm the one that's usually saying no one's going to ask you your GPA when you're 40. And I know that's not always the most popular take, but I mean, I just want kids to take good classes to learn and grow and thrive. Absolutely. And there's such a pressure to, get an A or to start or whatever. So you try to minimize that a little bit. I do think right now with the social media craze, just everything kind of being out there all the time is very pressure packed. And I worry about that, the FOMO, the fear of missing out. You're looking at friends on different social media platforms who appear to be having this great time and maybe you're not having this great time. So those are some of the newer challenges that I think we're all trying to navigate. But I think most of these things have been here for a long time.
Right.
There's expectations at home. There's expectations that you're putting on yourself personally. And then just trying to find your way as an 18 to 22-year-old is a challenge.
Yeah, and as far as like what your team does for just trying to keep their academic life, stay on top of it, are there any kind of patterns or routines that they do that you know of or that you tell them?
That's a great question. When we first started, we had all these things in place. We had like 3 different levels of like where the students were. They had different study halls, and we got away from that. And we're lucky because of this institution where our kids want to do really well in the classroom. So you don't need to babysit them. You don't need to make sure they're going to class and things like that. They kind of have to find their own way there. It's tough because you're balancing a high demand time athletically, and then you have your academic space, but they have to navigate together. I think there's a lot of peer mentoring there, like where they're giving best practices on how they do it. But I think you can relate to this. I try not to force much because for myself, let's just say I'm a morning person. I'm really good from like 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. And then like the rest of the day, I'm kind of fighting. You get some highs and lows. There's other people who are really good at night. We don't really want to pigeonhole. They have to find their way of navigating it. I just know that there's really good examples of people who thrive here in those spaces, and they're on our team. And those guys use each other to really help each other out through that process.
In one of your articles, you were really trying to emphasize the importance of controlling the things under your control and not trying to control things that aren't. How does that show up with your coaching?
For us, I mean, we're in the fall right now. We won't play a game that matters for the record for 6 or 7 months, but I really feel like we're winning and losing games right now because it's the ability to control what you can control. It's the ability to practice hard. It's the ability to recover well, to get great nutrition, to sleep, like all those things. And I think where athletes and people in general get in trouble is most people, forget athletes, they worry about the weather or the bad break they had or the flat tire, and all these things just knock them completely off their day.
Right.
But if there's so many more things that are within your control that if you just lean into those, like you're gonna be a much happier, more fulfilled person. So how does it show up in our coaching? The scoreboard takes care of itself type deal. Like if we do what we need to do, we'll say Mike Tomlin from the Steelers line is our opponents are nameless great faces. I don't even know who our opponents are. We're just trying to be the best version of us. Because that's the only thing we can control, especially like in this crazy college landscape right now with the transfer portal, 50-year, 6-year guys. Like we have zero control over any of that. But what do we have control over? We can rattle it all off. And so that's where we want to spend our time and energy, not worrying about those things that we don't determine.
Yeah. With students at Untapped, that kind of takes the form of you need to focus on sleep, you need to focus on diet, you need to focus on exercise. Once you have those, you're going to be able to go to class and focus. So then you're going to be able to have notes, you're going to be able to study. And then when it comes time for that test, you've done all of these things before now to not guarantee, but to likely raise your chances of getting a good grade, right?
Put yourself in a better spot. And you have no control over if that professor writes a test that is completely from something they never talked about and that test is impossible. Like you don't have control over that. But what do you have control over? Right. All those things you just rattled off, right? It's the best lesson you can possibly learn in life is that. I really believe that. And like I said, take it outside of the context we're talking about in school and sports. Listen to people. Once you become aware of it, listen to where people pull their energy from. It's not a place where it's going to be sustainable for fulfillment. But I've learned to try, and try is the word I'll use here because I'm a victim of it too. But if you lean into what you can control, you're just going to be so much happier.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, it's like that process. Like focus on the process, and then when it comes time, the product will be better.
Yeah, you can surrender to the result, right? You can surrender to whatever happens, knowing that you did the best you can, like truly did the best you can, and then whatever happens, happens. And that's how you free up and you're able to relax and you're able to go perform, and whatever happens in that performance then is nothing more than a learning experience, and then you do it again. I think that's the greatest gift you can give someone, is the ability to lean into what you can control.
One of your blogs was talking about winning the day. What is that philosophy and how does that look in your life?
When I wrote that article, I started thinking about when I put my head on the pillow at night and go, man, that was an awesome day. What occurred? And most people will think like, whatever, something crazy, right? Like I hit the lottery or, or we're on vacation. Yeah. And for me, that's not what makes a great day. Like for me, there were things like if I got a great workout, if I was able to read, if I'm able to write, if I could connect with a loved one, like a great conversation, if I could have a good conversation with a mentor or someone. Those are the things that were really fulfilling to me. If I could help somebody, you hold the door for somebody or carry a box for somebody, those things I would start thinking like, that was a great day. And those are things that are within your control. And so that's kind of how I define a good day for me. And I think there were 10 things on there. You're not going to hit all 10 every day, but if I can get 4 or 5, like I'm going to have more good days than bad days. So once again, it's just me trying to take control of my happiness and fulfillment. Now, how does it show up for our team? I think it goes back to that same philosophy. Like if we do what we need to do, regardless of whatever else happens in the world, whatever else happens amongst other teams, then we can still find satisfaction in what we're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of like that metacognition, the process of being able to reflect on your thoughts.
Yeah.
Be like, oh, this is something that I want to incorporate into my life, or maybe this is something that's not really benefiting me.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, for me, if I get up before 5, if I get up before 6, I very rarely have a bad day. If I get up and work out right away and I win that first block of the day, like everything's downstream from that moment. There's some simple things you can do to try to get ahead of things. They're not easy things to do. It's much easier to hit snooze, but I'm happier when I'm active. And I know it's not just as simple as that. I know there's people who have real struggles that are harder, but if you can try to do some very simple tasks, not easy, but if you can do it, you give yourself a better shot of having a good day. I think you learn too, and I'm pretty passionate about this topic, is that I'm not going to be reactive to things that happen. Bad things will happen today. Something will come my way. Somebody will have gotten in trouble and I'll have to handle some discipline, but that's not going to put me in a bad mood necessarily. I may have to address a situation that's not good, but I need to be able to flush that. I'm a father of 4. I'm a husband. Like I need to get home and then be present for them and not carry all of this. But if I'm able to do some of those simple things, it puts me in a better space to be able to compartmentalize and move through my day and not be reactive to things that happen around me.
You've written a lot about experiencing failure and successes and building resilience. When your athletes experience, I'd say setbacks rather than failures or losing a game or whatever, what's the kind of team approach to dealing with that? Yeah.
We try not to worry so much about the results. I can look back on everything that, even recently, we lost in a regional here. We had to get beat twice by a team. But I learned so much from that experience. I learned so much. We played one of the best teams in the country, and just observing them, I learned a lot. So anyways, I could go on and on, but the lesson is, I think you have to have the humility to understand that you didn't get the result you wanted, to look internally and say, what could I have done better? Like, where's not so much on that day, but in your process, and then be able to go execute. I think that's probably one of the greatest competitive advantages I have as a person, and then it probably bleeds into our team, is that I tend to look here first. I tend to look at myself first and go, what could I have done better? It wasn't the umpire's fault. It wasn't the weather's fault. Our players don't stink, and that's why we lost. It's like, what could Mike Deegan do in this situation to make it better? And I think if you could take any of your obstacles, setbacks, failures, or however you want to define them, and just learn, and truly learn, everyone's going to say it, but to truly learn, do the hard work, get messy. I've heard this analogy, like Beyonce watches every one of her concerts afterwards and looks for improvement. You've got to watch the tape. In sports we have tape, but you've got to go back. I didn't do well on this test. Okay, why? What? It's okay. But if you can take the emotion out of it, you're not stupid. None of those things. You just didn't do well. Okay. But what can I do differently? If you can do that, you're going to give yourself such a competitive advantage over 95% of the population, because they won't do it. I have kids in youth sports. I watch how parents talk to their kids, and they'll blame the umpires, the weather, the coaches are bad. And that starts getting indoctrinated into your mind to start looking for excuses when things don't go your way. Right. So to answer your question, I think we just look internally and say, what can we do better? We're not mad, but we didn't achieve our goal. We're not happy about that, by the way. Like, that hurts, that stings. So let's take our medicine, let's do better, let's rinse and repeat and see what happens next time.
Yeah. One of the things I was telling my students is there's very few things in this world where you can just succeed without failing first.
I don't know any other way. And if you're not, then you're probably not in the right arenas. If you're not failing, you're probably not stretching yourself enough, you know? Yeah, I think that's a great point. Like, any high performer, they've been fired, they've been cut. The ones that I admire are the ones that can take it, not shame themselves, not poor pitiful me, but learn to get back on it. There are just highs and lows in college, but they're just highs and lows in life too, right? And I always say in sports, if you pay the game of baseball proper attention, it'll reward you. But it won't reward you on your time. It's not like, I worked hard for 6 months, now it's my time. It doesn't go like that. You may work hard and you may not get the benefits for 5 or 10 years from now.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sitting down with me
today.
Thank you. I think everyone is really going to enjoy this interview.
If I can help in any way, let me know.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.